Hi, we're Oxygen Conservation, and this is the Shoe Room Sessions.
Well, I had to sit outside of it for a while, but
Sorry about that.
it's not your
We had a dubious ferry trip when we came to see you, and on the way back it was the Champions League final. So we were sat in like the area with 2,000 really drunk Borussia Dortmund fans, and just chanting to the point whereby the boat was like shaking, and we were like, "Okay, is there anywhere we can sit that isn't in the middle of a football? Right? No, okay, we can't." So yeah, that was fun. Never told you that story.
I'm sorry.
No, it was lovely to come see you. You know, like crazy world in like your spaceship over the top of the lock there. It is crazy. We should probably say who you are and what you do.
You want the personal version or
Yes.
the official accolades version?
Yes.
So both.
Yes, please.
Okay. Internally, I'm just a girl, and I realize I'm a 36-year-old woman, but I'm just a girl inside that is trying to make sense of the world, the crazy world, and trying to make it a little better. That's how I feel. An honest version. An official version, I'm a CEO of Earth Plus, a nature tech for soils, LinkedIn top voice, and I was born and raised in the Arctic, and I'm a mother of two.
You were like the most interesting person I know.
Thank you.
Take us back to the born and raised bit. So this is, I mean, your first feature book's there. You're writing next one now. If you go to the bookcase and take off your life story, take us through those chapters.
So I was born right next to the Polar Circle. If you've seen the James Bond GoldenEye movie, they show at the beginning of the movie a chemical weapons facility, not my home place, but they say it is. And the James Bond defeats all the Russian villains, obviously, like in a good American movie. And then he tries to escape, but there is a cliff, and there is like this little plane. So the plane falls off a cliff, he literally jumps after it, gets in the plane and steers it away as Victor. So they write down that it's my home city. It's not. But yeah, it's been part of a James Bond movie. It's a city located right next to the Polar Circle. It's not that small, so when I was born, I think it was around 450,000 people living there. And I actually haven't realized it was anything special until I started writing some childhood stories on LinkedIn about growing up in the Arctic. So for me, my childhood is polar nights and me going to a kindergarten or to school when my mom dressed me up in layers of clothes. I was literally like a cabbage. Even on top of my winter jacket, there was a scarf and only my eyes were visible. And then we would go downstairs from our apartment, and before going outside, so my dad took me every single day to school until I was in the 9th grade. He always said he was my bodyguard. And before we would step outside, he would rub my nose, he would rub my cheeks, and then we would open the door. It would be dark, but snow would be everywhere, sparkling with the lights. And my dad would pick me up on his arms. It would be like minus 30 degrees. And he would step, I would hear the sounds of the snow, and he would keep telling me jokes and taking me somewhere. So that's winters for me. And then the polar days in summer with constant sun around and light.
Like by no definition does that feel normal, but it was for you. So how old were you when you moved away from there?
First time when I left was 15 because I went for a year abroad in the US.
And was that high school over there?
Yes.
What was that like?
At home or in the US?
In the US.
It was different, definitely different. I lived in a host family. I had a Japanese host sister. I went to American school. There were only a few exchange students from abroad. And I remember you could pick your own classes, which for me was bizarre because in my school in Russia, you just had a direction of classes you could choose. So I went to like mathematical technical class, you had a humanitarian class and I think a science class, I don't remember anymore. And you couldn't really pick the level of classes or anything. So I come to the US, they suggest a schedule for me because I'm 15. And I go to the classes that they suggest and I realize that I already know everything in those classes. So I had to upgrade and I was studying with 18-year-olds and I still knew half of what we were doing in class.
And was that because you were super bright or because the school systems are offset?
And I think the school systems, because there were super bright kids in that school who were in the classes even higher than me, but you have to be willing to choose that class to push yourself or to get a scholarship. For my school, you just had the classes that you had, and they were standard.
So your class that you left in Russia, where were you in the? Were you top of that class?
Yeah.
Okay. But others, you still feel others within that group would have still been a couple of years ahead when they went to the US. So like the other people in your class in Russia would have still been further ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of the knowledge that they've studied, yes, because I was 15 when I was there. My fellow students were 18, and I already knew half of the program.
Interesting. Did you see a difference in individual drive and pushing people forward, or it was the system that said you will be better, you will learn faster?
I think it's everywhere. It depends on the people. Both in my school and in the US, there were people that were really striving forward for excellence. They wanted to take harder classes. They wanted to move further. And the people who were, just there for a ride and enjoying a little bit. I think it depends on the individual.
So just the 1 year, or whereabouts in the US were you?
Ohio.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It was funny because everybody asked me, hey, do you like it here? I said, yes, I do. And they said, and we don't.
So just the 1 year and then you went back home?
Yes, I went back home, finished school.
And did that leave you with a longing of wanting to be more US focused and move there, or were you happy to go back?
I really liked it in the US, but I was also happy to go back.
And then what did university look like?
So university I didn't do in the north anymore. It was not the Arctic. I did it in St. Petersburg. And then I also did university in Belgium as well. That was fun. I don't know. I think university years are always fun.
Why the Belgian link? Why one to the other?
So when I was in university in St. Petersburg, I joined a youth organization called ISEC, which is all about developing youth, leadership potential, social impact. And within ISEC, you can apply to different countries. So I applied for the national chapter of ISEC in Belgium. I got selected and I came here.
Were you targeting Belgium for a reason, or it was just somewhere in Europe you wanted to try something? Was it specifically Belgium, or?
It was like a list of open positions, and I saw it and I thought, Puerto Rico sounds fun, Belgium sounds fun, and maybe Indonesia. So in the end, I applied for Belgium and Puerto Rico. I got selected for Belgium and I went to Belgium. Nice. And the rest is history.
Did you think about your future and what you'd do job-wise and career-wise from a young age, or it was just what's the next interesting opportunity and decision?
I think it's always easier to make links backwards.
Yes, everyone makes it up.
Yeah.
Especially people who've like, oh, I had this life plan. No, you didn't. You connected stuff along. Yeah.
There were things that I really liked though. Well, first of all, I find it really funny. There were two favorite things in my childhood. They were Pringles chips and...
Which flavor? The original ones?
No, I don't know. I didn't grow up in a rich family, so I only got Pringles chips for New Year's. And then I would savor each bite.
That's the scarcity is such a point. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Okay. And then the second thing was Liégeois dessert. Now, the funny thing is, Liégeois dessert comes from Belgium, and Pringles chips are manufactured right... I literally lived very close to a factory at some point in Belgium where they ship it to all of Europe. So I can say, it was meant to be, but once again, it's connecting things backwards. No, when I was in university, I was starting to look what interests me when I was writing my bachelor thesis. And that's when I stumbled upon soils, superweeds, and how intensive agriculture creates these superweeds with chemicals that are very difficult to get out. And I wrote my thesis on the influence of transnational corporations on human rights, but not just on human rights directly, but also economically. And I really dived a bit into the case of soils. And that's when I first felt like, this would be interesting to do. Now, it took me more than a decade to come back to soils, but here I am.
Okay, so let's talk about that decade away from soils. So when you left university, did you know what you wanted to do straight away?
No, that's when I still wanted to be in ISEC, and that's how I moved to Belgium, and I worked here. Not here, we are in the UK now.
We're recording in London. Yeah. Although you got on an early train, so you're a little bit discombobulated.
I mean, it's close by in comparison to home. This is next door.
How far's home in the Arctic Circle from St. Petersburg?
1 hour and a half by plane.
Okay.
Or 24 hours by train. because it goes around the lake.
That is further away than Belgium to London. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yes.
Okay, so
And it's close by in Russian standards, like very close by.
this is what we were talking about to start with. It's all relative to
Yeah.
experience and what you...
You know, I had classmates in university that took 8 days just to get to university from their home. So when it was like a week of vacations, there's no way they could go visit their parents. They literally spent 8 days on a train just to get to university. Can you imagine that?
No.
Me neither. The longest for me was 3 days.
In our sort of interim decade, we left uni. You're in Belgium. Talk us through the career steps before we get to where we are right now.
I was first the vice president of a national chapter of ISEC in Belgium, which was leading 500 volunteers in different universities. And then I became a country manager.
So is
president of ISEC.
that an appointed job or is that like an elected position?
It depends which one. So it's an appointed, elected. You go through a series of interviews and then, I mean, the president of the national chapter decides who's to select in their team. But then normally the president is the one that is elected by the local chapters. So it's always for 1 year. So it's like you have to step out of your position in 1 year so that other people have the chance and opportunity. And I was for 1 year business development VP and then a president of ISEC in Belgium. And then I started working at MasterCard.
And did they come and find you, or was that a scheme you applied for through that? How did the MasterCard opportunity come about?
You really dive into details, huh?
Yeah.
I was looking for my next opportunity and I was looking everywhere in Belgium or abroad. So I was checking also for ISEC traineeships because ISEC does traineeships internationally. But I had some friends from ISEC that were already working at MasterCard at the moment. And I said, well, do you have any on your open positions? And turned out they were looking for a Russian speaker at the time to work with Russian-speaking markets. So I sent my CV, I had an interview, and I got a job offer, and that's how I stayed.
Nice. How many languages do you speak now?
I mean, I can say 2.5. Russian, English, and some Dutch.
So, MasterCard, how many years there?
11.
11. When you look back on that period now, what were your favourite parts, things you were most proud of?
I'm really proud of the way I think I started feeling more confident and in my skin because I had to work with clients. So I had to meet vice presidents of big banks. I had to meet national banks. I had to meet really high profile people. And I look very young. I'm also not very tall. So often people would say I'm a daughter of a colleague. So, and it happened more than once. So I would have to always position myself for people to take me seriously. And I'm proud into how I've grown into that. And the thing that I found the most fun was the teamwork and working with the people and achieving something in a short period of time, a longer period of time, striving for the goals. That was the most fun.
So before those experiences, before meeting the VIP client, how did you consciously think about how to prep for those meetings? If so, how did you get yourself ready into like that game day mindset?
Honestly, it was a while ago. I don't really remember.
Do you remember whether it was a conscious choice or not, or it was just like, I'm going to do this, let's do my best, learn from it and do the next one?
I think I was learning a lot from my senior colleagues because not every meeting I was doing alone. And then it was easier to do that.
Were there some particular bosses during that period that were really helpful and coached a lot?
Yeah, I mean, there were in the different markets, there were different bosses that could support. And I really learned from the way they do meetings and the way they behave. And I think that helped me.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I heard recently was early in your career, you shouldn't pick the company, you should pick the boss.
That's a good one.
Because if you have a fantastic boss, you'll learn more in that period and be able to accelerate forward, even if it's a smaller or a different company. And then have lots of them, learn lots of different things from each of the bosses. Like I look back now and think, I borrowed 1 or 2 ideas from each of the good ones I worked with. Mm-hmm. And a good idea for one boss doesn't mean it's necessarily a good idea for you. But if it works, take it as a tool to move forward and disregard all the others. And then you effectively, as well as your own takes, you've got a greatest hits catalogue of all the good things other bosses did.
It's an excellent advice, and I think there are two things in a great boss. One where you can learn from, but another one where the boss is really supportive and nurturing and kind of sees the best in you. For me, these were the best relationships, where they already see your potential and they push you, but at the same time, you come to work and you feel really appreciated. You feel like a champion, those types of boss-employee relationships or colleague relationships for me are the best ones because they really open up that safe space to be your better self and to achieve more.
There's a phrase I read in a book a couple of days ago, and an adaptation of it is, as a boss, your goal should be to help your reports achieve more than they even think possible. Because people put barriers in their own way that they don't need to. And we've got 3 or 4 people in the business right now, one of them's sat in the corner, that are going to be CEOs of something one day. And it's like saying to them, no, you can, like, whatever that mountain is, if you want to climb it, let's fucking go. Yeah, I love that about working with great people. How come the 11 years came to an end? Had it run its course? Why did you decide you were ready for the next chapter or the next adventure?
Well, I always felt internally that I really wanted to focus on sustainability full time. I felt like sales and customer relationships were very important for me to grow up out of my modesty and to be more outgoing. I felt it like an important step. But I always felt sustainability is it for me. Ever since
and over that 11 years, do you think that was like linear year on year? Or did you at one point just go, well, this is clicked now. I've gained everything I can out of that learning. I'm ready to go.
There are different stages that people go through before they're ready to go. At some point, they just start thinking about it. Then they start doing some small steps. Like me, I was trying to apply to some jobs, but they were really scarce. They were like 2-3 jobs in a few months. And I was getting, automatic responses over no. Then you feel you're ready to take the next steps. And that's when I did my degree in energy and climate. Then you feel like, okay, it's really pressing. Now I have to be creative. And that's when I started reaching out to lots of people, joining in other projects, saying, let me lead sustainability projects. So let me plug in. I'll do whatever outside of my job because it's really my passion. And then at some point, you reach a point where it's more painful to stay than to leave. And I don't mean that in a way, like I loved MasterCard, I love the people I was working with, and their sustainability ambition grew tremendously in the last few years. It's just I really wanted to work 100% on sustainability, and there were no roles that were 100% sustainability there. So I thought, okay, that's it for me. There were changes in the Arctic that were really drastic that I saw by the time I had 2 kids. And it was just more painful to stay in a sense that I felt I was not doing anything to contribute to a positive future.
Your children while you were still at MasterCard?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I hear 2 big things there that are often catalysts for people changing. Well, actually 3. The growth and the learning in the job, there's no more juice from the squeeze here. Like I've got everything I can get out of it.
Yeah.
And you never want to be the last person that leaves your party. So if you've gained everything you can, let's go. Then you seeing the changes at home in the Arctic, and then children arriving as well, which for me really made me think about, okay, what world am I leaving them?
Exactly.
So we've got those 3 big pushes. And how did you make the step out? How did it actually come about?
Oh, it was a long process, to be honest. It wasn't one day to another. The trigger was first receiving an award for 10 years of company service. It was just before my birthday, and if for birthdays we think 1 year back and 1 year forward, holding that award in my head made me think in decades. And I loved those 10 years, but I thought I don't want the next 10 years to be the same. They have to be different. And that's when I started to kind of really meditate a lot, understand what I really want to do next. That's when I also started putting myself more out there. So I started posting on LinkedIn, I started reaching out to people, I started having a lot of conversations to understand what is going on in the space and positioning myself as well. Also plugging into volunteering initiatives, doing projects in the company, outside of the company, trying everything.
How many hours a day are we talking about during this period? How many hours a day are you investing into building a future?
I was maybe 2 or 3, something like that. I still had to do my
day job, mum, wife, plus these.
Yeah.
So,
but wait, my boss and my big boss were very supportive of me doing sustainability initiatives as long as I did my job well. So, you know, when you
So you
reach
matched
a
it
point where
into
you
place.
like can work more efficiently, as long as the job is done, I was allowed to do sustainability for the company in my working hours as well. So that's the beauty of having supportive bosses that see that you're passionate about something and give you the space to do it.
Yeah. So many signals. So I was thinking about the amount of people who have spoke to me about not being, this is not people in OC, it's people in sort of the wider network going, oh, I want to be doing something like OC, I want to start my own thing. But the pain of staying where they are is not enough. They're just comfortable still. They're like, I'd quite like to do this, but this is pretty comfortable, so I'll just stay where I am. Well, those people who don't have all those factors of enough pull to do something exciting, and the push they've got to get away, they end up still there in another decade, and they're happy to just watch them by. And also, it does, even if you've got a supportive boss and family and everything, it takes that extra work you were putting in to make a change. And for so many people, it's just easier not to. And that's why they end up staying where they are for a long time.
I think it's a combination of factors, because also the older you are, the more difficult it is to make that change.
Totally.
Because if you are switching fields, I mean, you have kids, you have a loan, you have financials to manage. It's not like you can go and take an unpaid internship position somewhere. It's more difficult. And then if you're moving to a space where you don't have official experience, even if you're passionate about it, like you can't always get at the same level of the role. So you have to take a financial hit, and you need some buffer for that as well. So I think that golden cage moment, it plays a role. And then indeed that, yeah, some people don't take a step. And when I was leaving, I talked to some people and I saw the sadness in their eyes. Like I felt that they also wanted to do something different, but they were not yet at the stage, or maybe they couldn't take a step. But yeah, I think the world would be a beautiful place if we had more space and less fear to chase our dreams.
There's that is poetic and beautiful. There's definitely a gap there for another VC style firm that helps almost older founders make that leap. So there's an amazing chief investment officer we know who himself has just become financially independent, has a level of freedom he never thought possible. And he asked me to go for coffee with him the other day. And he said, oh, so all this cash arrived. I don't need to think about money again. And he's like, and I just thought, I want what you have about how you feel about OC in the business. I just want that. And he's like, how do I have that? And I'm like, well, you're going to have to start your own thing, find some great people and do it. Otherwise, you're not going to love someone else's business like you love your own. And he's now starting to think about that build and how he steps away. And he's in his 50s. Now, he's able to because he's got the platform to do it from. But it's really interesting. I don't think he ever thought, when money's irrelevant to me now, what am I going to want? And he's like, I want to be really excited about the next challenge. So it's really interesting.
I think also when money is not an issue for people, they start thinking about legacy as well.
Do you know?
Maybe not everyone, but I've seen quite some examples.
Yeah. But that makes sense, right? Once you're not worried about the immediate, you can think about that. One of the questions you asked me when I came to say you that threw me, because no one had asked me before, was about legacy.
Yeah.
Thinking about it. And actually, sometimes from a questions you're not expecting or not ready, the truth really comes from it if you just let it flow. And I remember a not particularly well delivered answer by me, but my answer was,
it was an awesome delivery.
You're very kind, thank you. This is the mutual admiration thing. I just spend all the time telling you you're awesome, and then you spend
that's the nurturing environment, right?
Yeah.
Where you see the best in every person.
It's true. The truth in it was there, though, that I don't want a legacy. I want what us to have done to not matter at all. If it's literally like, like the amount of search engines that are forgotten, or the microchip manufacturers that just are not there anymore. How the world, if OC doesn't matter, we've solved for nature. We've solved for nature and we've solved for climate because it's irrelevant. Although the flip side of that is, it's so bad that it doesn't matter. But let's not do the bad one. Let's do the good one. That segues into, I will ask you what you want your legacy to be, but we'll come back to that question. You talked about the changes you were seeing in the Arctic. So when you did reflect back, what did that look like? What were those climatic changes that you were observing and becoming aware of?
So the changes in the Arctic are most visible when you look in time, when you can compare it to how it was and how it is now. And for me, that was starting to become very different when I could compare the pandemic times to my childhood. So when I was a little girl, it was a couple of months of -30 degrees in winters, and the thing is, my home city is located on the river. It's about 2.5 kilometers wide, and it splits the city into two parts. So you have like
The
main.
river is 2.5 kilometers wide.
Yes, it's 2.5 kilometers wide. Why are you laughing?
Scale.
It's a river.
Scale.
Yeah, I mean it's really close to the sea, so that's why it gets much wider. And it splits the city into two parts. So you have the main city center, and you have small isolated villages on the other side, and you have no bridges in between. So in summer you can take a boat on the other side, and in winter you literally walk on ice. But it's not like, oh, I can cross anywhere, right? That would be insane and very dangerous. But there is a special road, like they wait until the ice on the river is thick enough, about 20 centimeters, and then they put a road in place. There are lights, you can walk, you can drive a car on it. And then in the middle, because my home city was actually the first port of Russia to Europe, in the middle you still have ships that are coming through. So there they are breaking the ice, and there is just water with ice blocks. And they put wooden pallets on top, so you stop on those wooden pallets and you cross. My husband said it was terrifying. I took him just to cross that place, we had no point of going to the village on the other side, but it was an experience. And I mean, it's okay. There is a person who, watches all of that, who installs those things.
I don't think it's okay.
No, you should laugh. I mean, what do you do otherwise? Anyway, apart from what you're thinking right now.
We didn't let people cross roads anymore. Like, it's not... Yeah, like you can't have steps without like security, like barriers and yellow paint and things like. Imagine the risk assessment being signed off, but like we just wouldn't do it. Like
it's gotten better in the last years. Now you have not just wooden pallets, but you have like a holder, like a bridge.
Handrails.
Yeah, handrails.
It's the future. Yeah. Sorry. It's different. Context is everything.
Don't break my childhood excitement about that.
Hey, I would take the ice blocks and the wooden pallets over North Lincolnshire and the steelworks any day of the week. So
I think to me it's the closest you can get to walking on water, which I think is pretty cool.
There's the poetry again.
So I grew up in a house, in an apartment in a house that was really standing on the river embankment. So I could see that road of life. It was called the Road of Life, and it's still called the Road of Life because it connects those villages. And when I would go to school, it was always along the river. I would come back home always along the river. That's how I watched the seasons changed. So I always knew when they installed the road. And I always knew when the ice was broken. And that's how, I watch nature like this. So normally that road is in place early December, because you need minus temperatures, of course, for the river to freeze. But during the pandemic, the temperatures started getting much warmer.
And it'd be December till when, usually, when you were a child?
February, March.
Okay, so 3 or 4 months.
That. Yeah.
Right.
So during the pandemic, first of all, I've learned, and my mom still lives in the Arctic, I've learned that minus 30 degrees is now considered an abnormal temperature for the Arctic, because they only take the averages for the last 15 years. So now it's -7, -10. Also during the pandemic, sometimes it was even above 0. So depending on the year, the road was in place 1 or 2 months later. And maybe it's okay for people in the main city center, but for the people on the other side, it's difficult because shops are running out of food. And those who had COVID and had to go to the hospital, there are no hospitals in these villages. They had to call aviation to bring them in. So that's quite drastic. And it's in my home region, which is the size of France. Once again, relativity. There are at least 130 roads like this, connecting villages. Because in the Arctic, infrastructure is based on ice. So when the ice is not there, there is no infrastructure anymore. So that was one change that I witnessed. And then in the summer, also during the pandemic, there was the year, I think it was 2021, when there were really bad floods in the UK, in Belgium, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Switzerland. It was constant rain that summer everywhere here. 20 degrees and rain. Well, in my home city, it was plus 30 degrees for 2 months with no rain. And when I was little, about 3 years old, my parents bought a small piece of land outside the city. My dad built a small wooden house there, and we grew their veggies and berries. And my mom said in that summer she had to water the plants every morning and every evening, which she has never seen before. And that also might be good for the Arctic agriculture because there is more sun and maybe things grow better. But Arctic is also home to boreal forests, and there's a lot of attention that is being paid to the Amazon, which is truthfully right. It's the lungs of our planet. But the Arctic is home to boreal forests, which are the largest carbon sink. They store about 11% of carbon, mainly in their soils. And when the temperatures like that happen, the forests dry out and they start burning, and they don't just burn, they release generations old carbon from their soils, and they turn from carbon sinks into carbon emitters. So that's the danger of the temperatures like that. It's melting ice, but it's also damaging the forests and releasing carbon. And these two cases for me, in the winter and in summer, they really gave a signal, uh-oh, something is really not the way it used to be. The change is really accelerating, and it's time to do something.
And do you think that is that awareness felt in the people in the city where you grew up as well? Like if you lined them all up and took an opinion poll, do they recognize their climate and their way of life is changing dramatically?
Well, I talked to my mom, and she does say that the winters are not the same. So she does tell me, yeah, the weather is really, really not like it used to be. There is no proper winter, or like it's colder when it's not supposed to be colder. So she does notice that the weather is different.
We've just bought another estate in the Cairngorm, so the Highlands in Scotland. Amazing place. And we've inherited two brilliant rangers there, a gentleman called Bryce and Ian. And I spoke to Bryce when we were last up there, and I said, how have you seen the climate and the environment change?
Yeah.
Now, bear in mind, these are people who would have traditionally done gamekeeper roles. So they're out on the hill every day, managing estates in a very traditional Scottish way.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, very, very different. Weather patterns are different. Climate's moving. Things are very different. And I said, so if I lined up all the people who do similar jobs to you, is there any of them that would deny climate change? It's like, nope, not a single one. Every one of us know the climate's changing dramatically, which I take as a massive positive, because if you'd have said to me, do you think those sort of almost manual workforce working on the land would recognize this was atmospheric climatic change? I wouldn't have been sure that they would, but he was like, yep, without a shadow of a doubt, the people who are interacting with the environment every day literally see it. So shout out to Bryce and Ian. Hey guys. So we've got a series of catalysts for you. We've got work, we've got family, we've got planet and awareness of climatic changes, and that became Earth Plus. So talk to us about the mission statement, what the business is, what life's like on a day-to-day basis for you now.
I'm gonna first roll back into the story of how it happened to be.
Okay.
Because I was still at MasterCard, and I received a message on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn at some point became my tool to connect with people.
Which you're very good at, LinkedIn.
I try.
What year did you start really putting effort into LinkedIn?
2020.
2020, okay.
Yeah, because some people say, wow, you just, skyrocketed. It was a quantum jump. No, it wasn't. It's like just every day doing.
Have you ever heard
things.
the quote, people want the view, but they don't want to do the climb? So
no, but yeah, I get
people think it's easy. They see, oh, that must have been a piece of cake. No, it wasn't. You just weren't there for the last 5 years. We get that a lot. People assume that I had a privileged background, was gifted things, or this business just turned up. They weren't there for the miles and the hours. Apparently, damn it, it should have been that, yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice? I think it just happened.
No, because that's the fun bit's the journey, right? And the experiences and the challenges and the stories and the hours. Yeah. Anyway, LinkedIn message.
So I got a LinkedIn message. I do get a lot of LinkedIn messages, but that one was from my colleague now, Fredrik Verstraete. He said I was an interesting contact. Bonus points, get my attention. For anyone who is listening, little compliment.
How many messages are you going to get now going, interesting connection? Yeah.
Okay, anyway, he said I was an interesting contact. And he said he was doing something really innovative and was all over the news. And there were 3 links in that message. They were about bio-based construction, industrial hemp, and soil pollution. So we started talking, we met for lunch, and he told me that he ran one of the first pilots in the world to clean forever chemicals from soils. It was like a time of a huge scandal in Belgium around forever chemicals. And he ran the first pilot, one of the first successful pilots in the world, extracted it from the soil with the power of hemp, studied where the pollution went into the plant, and then used the clean plant parts to make bio-based construction materials that were carbon negative. So that made me dive into the topic. I started learning about pollution and I thought, Belgium is such a wonderful country. I love living here, until I started understanding the scale of invisible pollution that we are facing. I was like, whoa, okay. And that goes in our food, and this is what my children are eating. We need to do something about it. And then also the idea that you can actually connect soils and construction is one of the largest emitters, but you can actually turn it into a carbon sink and really stock carbon in there. And I thought it was such a beautiful model. And when I heard that story, I had two thoughts in my head. One of them was, if we can do it here in one of the most polluted countries in the world, for forever chemicals, Belgium is. I mean, we don't have global statistics, but if you look at Europe, that's the case. I thought then we have the obligation to help clean the world, like the ocean cleanup does for oceans. We have to help clean the world. And then the second thought in my head was, well, I don't want to do anything else. And if that idea came to me, probably I have the obligation from the universe to make it happen. And yeah, that's how we started working together.
And the stuff you had out on LinkedIn, were you talking about soils and your interest in that already? Is that what Frederick saw, or it was just fortuitous that he talked to you about that and your passion was about it as well?
As I said, it's easier to connect dots backwards.
Yeah.
It's not like he sent me something about soils and I immediately thought, oh, that's a connection to my bachelor thesis. Not really. Frederick was looking for partners to collaborate with, and I was working at MasterCard, so it was interesting to see if that would pick up. So that's why he reached out. And the story was just so fascinating that they said, well, look, in terms of the business model of MasterCard, I'll try to connect you with people, but I have no idea, because normally companies tend to support something closer to their business, primary business. But on the other hand, I really want to work with you. So
we should probably touch
that
on
happened.
Frederick for a minute, because he is just a force of nature, right?
He's
Energy,
such a force.
enthusiasm,
Yeah.
charisma, everything's possible. You can't, like, such a commitment to a belief of purpose and drive, and like the consummate networker and connector, and
Yeah.
what a guy.
And the ideas and connecting the things that are not connecting, because he was already in sustainable construction for a while. All of a sudden, he was looking into hemp. All of a sudden, a pollution scandal. He thought of connecting those things, creating a business model. Now we don't just work on polluted land; we work on degraded land too. That's actually the biggest part of our business. But the constant drive of ideas and creativity, of innovation, of things that Frederick comes up with, is just incredible. You know, it's so fun to.
It's not going to
be
stop. It's
working
just going to
together.
keep coming.
No,
and adjusting.
and once again, people might think it comes easily, but you have no idea all the forces against that we are facing, and how much Frederick is managing them, and how he like still finds the ways. I just admire him every day.
People see the 3 or 4 ideas that grab or get traction. They don't see the 2,000 he came up with and worked through and dismissed. It's a bit like, I think it's Picasso did 2,000 sculptures and 3,000 drawings and 4,000 paintings, and you know the 20. People know the greatest hits. They don't know all the stuff that was left on the drawing room floor. So what does the business look and feel, and what is it like today?
So we have 4 lines of business. Okay, we have the land regeneration part that splits into phytoremediation, which is cleaning the polluted soils, and our proprietary knowledge specifically on PFAS. Why the pilots around the world failed, because they sprinkled some seeds of hemp, they let it grow, and they were like, it doesn't pick up pollution fast enough. But we've invested in the last years, and together with partners, we've created a biotechnology that is natural soil additives that break down the pollution in the soil so the plants can absorb it 30 times faster. So now all of a sudden, it's not decades that it takes to clean, but it takes a few years. So PFAS is one of the specialties. And the second one is land regeneration in general that we're looking into. Now, the second line of business is agricultural land farming and post-processing, where we collaborate with farmers to grow hemp as a rotation crop. Scientists have actually calculated that if you grow it as a rotation crop, it helps restore soil biodiversity, and the yields of the main crops are going up at least 5 to 15%, like potatoes, wheats, etc. So we work with farmers to integrate hemp as a rotation crop, and then you also need to process the plant. Like, it's not that you can just put standard machinery. It's actually it's a fascinating plant, and I think it's also a pity that it's undervalued. I have to talk about that, because whenever you say mycelium, people are like, yes, funky mycelium. You say seaweed or kelp, people are like, yes, and then you say hemp, and they're like, huh, is it drugs? Anyway, we owe our wealth to hemp. Hemp is an amazing crop. In Europe, we didn't have cotton, so our clothes was from hemp. Our food, our houses was from hemp. The shipping industry, the ropes, the sails were made out of hemp. So many things wouldn't be possible because of hemp. Even when Henry Ford made his first car, it was made out of hemp and running on hemp-based fuel. It's an amazing plant. Why is it amazing?
Why was it forgotten?
Oh, we say it's the world first fake news. Now, I've heard the story, so I can't verify 100% whether it's correct or not. But from what I hear, in 1937, there was a US businessman that invested in a paper business made out of wood, and previously paper was made out of hemp. And he had like government connections and newspaper connections, and that's how he tied industrial hemp to marijuana, so saying that it's a drug, and then it was forbidden all over the world.
So interesting. So if you'd have seen, do we make paper from hemp anywhere in the world still?
Yes, we do.
And if you had a sheet of paper from wood and hemp, could you tell the difference?
Probably you can, yeah. It's the same with fabric. You can tell the difference between a hemp fabric and cotton, for example.
Okay, but we'd still function. We still could do it. It's still possible for it to.
Yeah. Actually, you can use the whole plant. Why is it fascinating? Because it grows really fast, to 4 meters in 4 months. Like, it's beautiful. I have pictures when just at harvesting. It's so much taller than me. It looks beautiful. It also uses 90% less water to grow than traditional crops. It helps restore soil biodiversity because it has deep roots. And then it also captures a lot of CO2 because it grows so fast. So in these 4 months, it captures up to 15 tons of CO2 per hectare, which is 4 times more in 4 months than a young forest in a year.
Wow.
And then you create a lot of biomass, and you can valorize a lot of parts of the plant. So you can use seeds for nutritious hemp oil. You can use it for proteins, for food. You can even make beer, because hemp is actually a family of hop.
And you have all the examples of this stuff in your offices, right?
We do. And then it's also one of the strongest fibers in the world. So if you break down, like, you cannot tear the plant apart. So you can make a lot of very strong, wonderful materials from it. But that also means that it's not like anyone can just grow hemp and make materials out of it. It's so strong that you need special machinery to cut it, because traditional one will just break while you're trying to harvest it.
And are there other uses for that machinery? So are you taking machinery that's used for a certain purpose and reprofiling it, or is it completely custom machinery you need?
You will have to talk to our processing team. I think it can be maybe used in other cases, but I don't have that.
Okay, so that's a big barrier to entry, is having the ability to process it still. And
yeah, like we've cracked the processing part together with our partners, because normally you can have huge factories around the world where it's super expensive, and then you can't make the business case work. But first of all, it's a strong fiber, so you need to process it. Second of all, for bio-based materials, you need stable quality. And when you produce chemical materials, you can tweak things in the settings and you get a different result. But on bio-based materials, you're dependent on nature. You're dependent on rain, on sun, on dryness, on how the plants grew. Because, for example, if it's a lot of rain and you don't have such high plants as you normally would, you have different quality. So you all have to post-process it into a specific quality to get to a certain quality of a product afterwards. And that's very important for bio-based materials to pick up. You need a certain quality. So it's also something that we've invested as a team for a long time, and the team has done an amazing job together with our partner to like really crack the case on that. So that's the second line of business, the post-processing. The next line of business is production of products together with our partners. So currently we are launching biocomposites, which is 50% hemp, 50% recycled plastic, and you can use it in different applications. You can use it inside, for example, for, plinta here on the floors. You can use it for windows. You can use it. Now we're launching traffic poles together with our partner Traffic Road in the cities, so you don't have to cut trees. You can just have traffic poles like this, and they're circular. So Traffic Road has a system. If it breaks, they pick it up, they chop it, and they make a new traffic pole. So a circular loop. So biocomposites is a very big part of our business. With another partner, we are making insulation, house insulation, and that's also, replacing traditional polluting or fossil fuel based materials. We have hemp based insulation and also R&D on mycelium based insulation, mycelium plus hemp, which is another fascinating material. What else? We have some projects going on reinforced hemp wood, for example. So we are looking into different applications where we can substitute polluting materials with better natural based materials that can be really carbon negative and lower the emissions. So that's the third line of business, the materials together with our partners. And then we throw in a couple of fun projects like recycling of padel balls into insulation. Not bio-based, but circular, just because we love padel and you use balls for like 3 games and then they're a waste. And then the fourth line of business is Earth Plus, which is a technology platform to trace everything from fields to the final product. So you know how the project is doing at any time, step of the way. And then this way have reporting for our partners to put in their ESG reports, but also in the short-term future, carbon credits based in buildings in line with the upcoming European regulation.
It's an incredible array of things across the business. How do you decide which is the most important thing to work on and when? How do you split your time?
The thing is, it's very holistic. You can't just take one of those lines and make it work. Because if you just tell farmers, you should grow hemp, it's really good for your soil. Farmers need revenues out of the crops that they grow. Otherwise, they can't make it to the next year. So if you don't have an offtake of hemp, then maybe they'll grow it for 1 year, realize they can't sell it, and it stops there. For materials as well, if you say, oh, I'm going to make materials now, but if you don't have the supply of biomass, then you can't make those materials either. If you don't focus on post-processing and make it cost efficient and make it really high quality, you can't make products either. So you really have to control from fields to the final products if we are able to make that scale. And that's a case where you have to bring different partners together, and that's a scale of radical collaboration. But that's the only way to make a win-win-win. Better soils, better buildings, less CO2.
I hearing you talk about the business today, it's why I love starting with the sort of backstory and things, because you're right. You can trace back today's story to each of the different chapters where you were learning an element of this, a skill that was required. Without the MasterCard chapter, you don't have the partnership building skills that you needed to be doing what you're doing today. It's fascinating. Like when I talk about the start of OC, it's a big amalgamation of a love of rivers and the environment, an obsession with data, and a commitment to building like a high performance culture and recruiting and finding the best talent possible. That's what OC is, just put together. Are all the things that I was really passionate about and wanted to do anyway.
I've heard somewhere that the best creative ideas don't come out of those ideas because they've been invented already, but because of combining things that were not combined before.
Conceptual collisions.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what you're doing, and that's what makes oxygen conservation so unique. Because of these different pieces combined together, I think that's
your business, someone could come up with something vaguely similar, but it would never be the same as your version because they haven't had exactly the same experiences.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about that consciously about your kids? So I'm like, a board game you're playing, a place you go. I wonder what element we're putting into their psyche that they might apply again in future.
Oh, absolutely. I'm thinking about that quite often, and I'm thinking we are so busy, trying to build businesses, writing books in free time, that sometimes
free time,
exactly. Weekends.
Okay.
So then the time with the kids is very limited, and then sometimes while you're doing some things or working, the kids have to be on themselves, and I'm always thinking like how to make the time the best quality, but also what are the kind of things we are putting in their minds that they're going to take into the future. and how do we do it better? Because I mean, probably we're gonna screw them up in a certain way, but then how do we make the positive outweigh the negative?
The three hats you wear, CEO, wife, and mum, which are you best at? What's the order of the three hats?
You know, I'll be very honest with you, because people come to me and they say, "Oh, you're like a superwoman. You do this and that." I'm not. I feel like I suck at everything, at all three, because there's just not enough time, and yeah, it's very hard to balance all of them. So I try my best, but it's just the reality of life.
And do you try to evenly distribute time as much as possible in the three?
Or it's absolutely not evenly distributed. No.
No. So what's the time distribution?
Yeah, mainly work.
Mainly work.
Yeah.
And then mum or wife?
I would say mom and then wife.
Would your husband agree with that order?
Probably yes, but he is now a local politician. He's a city minister, and he also still has his corporate job. So
Just because you guys didn't want a complicated life. Like, I know, but let's make this harder on ourselves.
he wanted to make a difference, and I'm really proud of him. At some point,
I think when we came to see you, he was thinking about that job or running towards it. It wasn't fully done yet. So
I think so. Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. Now it's like in 1 year he went from a zero to hero in my eyes. In terms, I mean, he's always a hero in my eyes, but like in local politics, he really, in 1 year he joined the party, and then he became a city minister just within a very short period of time. And sometimes you think it's luck, but on the other hand, you also, or you can say someone is born for it, but I think he has been preparing for it his whole life. Like when he was 6, he knew all the European countries and their capitals. He was always reading books about geopolitics, watching politicians, documentaries, everything. Like he knows so much that
I
I
can't
think
think
he
of
was
anything
just
worse. The patience.
his idea of relaxing time in the evening is watching a World War II documentary. I'm like, honey, I'm gonna just read a love novel, you know, because I have to disconnect. And he's like watching a war documentary. But you know, it's his thing. He really enjoys learning, but also learning from what others are doing and how politicians behave and actually what is happening, because there's a lot of manipulation, there's a lot of games, and yeah, it's a different world. Anyway, so my husband is very busy these days. I'm very proud of him, but he's very busy, so we have very little time to be the best wife, the best husband. Yeah.
The thing that so Helen and I have a weekly like planning meeting.
Oh wow.
Literally a look at the calendars, like shared calendar, what does the next week look like? So there's like a business guru called Dan Martell. He's got a massive YouTube following. Wrote an amazing book called Buy Back Your Time. And like if anyone's going to
What's the name?
Buy Back Your Time.
Buy Back Your Time. Okay, I have to read it.
If anyone was starting a business or running a business, I would totally advocate reading this book because, and I run with my amazing PA Louise. Hello, we run his inbox management system. He's one of those CEOs who runs a several £100 million software as a service and marketing agency and things like that. But he doesn't just talk about like why he does things. He literally breaks down, this is how I structure my inbox. This is my way of working with my PA. This is how I talk to my wife about my calendar and how so all the stuff that's not sexy, but that you need to make it work on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
You know, so people see the superwoman that you are, but they don't see the travel, the logistics, the planning, the childcare, all those things that are so difficult to make things work. Well, he talks through how that works. So Helen and I have a weekly meeting where we do that. And also viewing time as, and we're trying to do this across the company overall really as well. So like got amazing people who make big sacrifices to travel a lot and work really hard, but often it's the partner that's making the sacrifice to make it possible. So, you know, you being here is going to put more pressure on your other half and family and things.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do from an employment perspective now is think, okay, how can we say thank you to the partners of the team, not just the member of the team who go and do something, or they travel for 4 days to do an amazing event with a local community. Well, how then do we send the right thank you to the partner who had a harder week as a result of that?
How do you do that?
So at the moment, for example, our amazing director of natural capital, Chris, I sent a box of vegan chocolates to him and his wife because he'd been away on a trip and had achieved something amazing with a framework. But the note just went, "Thank you for supporting Chris in making this possible." So we're just trying to explore how we might be able to do that. Just recognise that we haven't got it right yet, but we're starting to think about how we actually recognise the people that make the sacrifices to allow others to succeed. If you can include families and stuff in the business, that's one of the beauties of having like a smaller startup, right?
Yeah.
Harder in a corporate environment, but now, can you include families? Can you let people experience why we love what we're doing?
Yeah, we did a trip to Spain to look at the Regeneration project with the kids, and my husband also joined. And for them, it was a super cool experience because for them it was fun to play with each other and with the dogs and be in nature. It was like on a farm, they just became completely different children, and it was amazing.
How
to see
old are
them
yours
connect.
now?
8 and 6.
Exactly the same as mine. Do they know what you do? Do your kids understand what you do?
Oh, there's a funny story about that. They had to explain that at school, and they said that daddy is a politician, and they didn't know what mom was doing. So I had to sit them down, I had to explain it, and I said, yeah, I restore soils, and then we use plants, and then we make material houses out of it. And they're like, whoa, that's so cool. I have to double check if they still remember it a half a year after. But yeah, it was a funny story. So I need to tell them more.
Mine think I host a podcast.
Okay.
That's what they think the job is. So I'm like, yeah, that's all right in a minute. And he's celebrating behind the camera going, my job is done. With
Daddy just sits and talks to people, right?
I mean, that might be true as well. Yeah. What a luxury to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's great.
We laugh with my husband that because we always work at PCs, maybe the kids are thinking that we're just playing video games.
It's gaming all the time.
Yeah.
We're now like our kids might literally be able to professionally do that if they wanted to as a job. There are people who are professional video gamers and things.
You know what? I took my children when I was a speaker at Love Tomorrow. It's like a sustainability conference at the largest musical festival in the world. It was insane. 4,500 people in the audience, like a huge screen, animations, everything, because it's the same venue where they play music and world famous DJs come. And I was allowed to bring my kids in so they could actually hear me speak on stage. And I even included a picture with them in my talk. And they were the front row. So that was a very special moment. And then
it's amazing, right?
When I came down from the stage, my daughter hugged me for like half an hour afterwards, saying how amazing I was. And people afterwards sent me messages on LinkedIn that they saw me with my kids and how my daughter was hugging me, and it was really cute.
So my daughter would love it. My son would be sat on his iPad. Don't care. Whatever, Dad. Whatever.
And that's because you're thinking of a traditional conference, but there, the screens and the butterflies and the animations and everything was just so amazing and the whole venue is like very futuristic. They could walk around. There was a mushroom stage, everything is like so out of this world. There is a dragon that opening his mouth and like is roaring fire.
You're completely sure you hadn't wandered into the wrong part of the lab and you were with the dubious mycelium there, that it wasn't... I'm joking. So you have an incredible network, an incredible reach, but a lot of what you do has to be educating, informing, even as simple as explaining to people that no, hemp is not an illegal drug. How much of your time do you spend explaining and educating people?
Most of it, because I mean, we are at this point where if you say fitness and health is very important, people kind of get it. So you don't have to spend that time educating. In our case, soil pollution or degradation is invisible. Like I'm always comparing it to plastic. Yes, you have microplastics, but you can also take a picture of the Pacific garbage patch or river somewhere full of plastic and you say, oh, plastic pollution is so bad. But soil contamination, soil degradation are invisible. And then it all goes into our food. Like many people don't realize that soils in our guts actually have the same bacteria and nutrients. So if soils are depleted or polluted, so are we, because 95% of our food comes from soils, but it's invisible. So like there's a lot of time that we need to spend on that, and also how quickly the soils are degrading and that we need them for our life.
Have you seen that argument? Or there's a diagram that has carbon emissions as like a purple smoke. And it's like if the emissions from a vehicle or for anything was bright purple in the atmosphere and it hung there, we'd have done something about it generations ago. Similar principle, right?
I've recorded a course with Sustainability Unlocked few years ago, and that was literally I said, if we see purple smoke and every day it gets darker.
I mean, I'm
it's
maybe
huge.
quoting you back to you there, so
Maybe
I guarantee
I
I'm
don't
not.
know. maybe the ideas come to different people at the same time.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, we would have done something about it, and that's why there's an educational piece. Plus, we have to educate about hemp and the power of hemp. And then we have to educate about bio-based materials because the construction industry is very conservative and they don't want to take any risks. So you have to educate, say these materials are good, you have to go through all the certifications. So at every stage you have to educate. And then we are arriving in carbon credits in buildings, which are also just starting up. So that's another educational piece. So like there are so many pieces that you need to educate on that majority of the time is spent there. But then some people really get it instantly and they're like, that's it. We're going to work together with you.
How do you not get bored of your own messaging over and over again?
It's a great question. I was thinking just about that a year ago, because I think the challenge with the impact startups, or that's what I was thinking. I'm going to start something and we're going to make a lot of impact right away. But that's not how it works. You spend most of the time pitching and talking to people in the first years to get it off the ground and to scale faster. So you still have to be excited about your own message a year after 300, 1,000, 10,000 conversations later. You still have to be excited about it. And that's when the belief is important and just keeping going is important. I got up at an event with the CEO of the river cleanup, and he was the one who said I think it's his father who told him that you just have to keep going, you don't stop, you just keep going. But I think the excitement also comes from a lot of new little things that come around that. That's what Frederick does amazing well with like new little ideas, like hemp beer or growing a mycelium chair or making a paddle racket out of hemp. It's not like that we're gonna roll out a production of paddle rackets made out of hemp, but it's fun. It's a fun way to like bring a new angle to what you're doing. Or now we're discussing a couple of really, really cool events. Cannot reveal them yet, but we are super excited
It just
about.
brings the momentum and the fun and the re-energize and the build and the build.
Yeah. And then also in parallel, you also have the new milestones that you're thinking of, like, oh, I really want to speak at that stage. And then when you get that stage, you think, oh, I want to do something else,
Do you ever celebrate the achievements?
Oh, I'm horrible at celebrating them. No. I
Yeah,
don't.
tell me about it.
Yeah.
You're just like, what next?
Yeah. What like not fast enough. No. I think we really have to pause and to celebrate and kind of have that.
Are you talking to me or you now?
I think the whole sustainability community. I think it's important.
Do you have you ever thought about what would happen if you did become more satisfied and happy with what you achieve?
I definitely think that if I'm more happy and grateful with what I already have today, it's going to be a lot easier to achieve more.
Oh, you think? I think the exact reverse.
Well, you know what? I've had a couple of people on a podcast and they said, we have to realize that we're already living in paradise. And I'm like, what? Paradise? I mean, look at all the doom and gloom. Like, no, we're living in paradise. There are so many things at our fingertips. Like we're also learning a lot about nature, and the nature is amazing. Like the way we've progressed is amazing. Now we have to make sure that we like turn that paradise into a thriving place that can sustain itself, and that we change our way of lives, that we don't make things much worse. And I'm like, that's a different angle to look at it. I think we have to, be more grateful for every step, because if we are like caught up in doom, then that paralyzes people. Fear and anxiety that paralyzes people. I think a healthy dose of like understanding that we need to act is important to give a kick. But on the other hand, what I've heard from some people was like, well, if things are so bad, then let's just go on the beach, have an ice cream, and like enjoy life while we can. And they don't care about changing things anymore. So I think it's a very careful balance that we have to strike.
Have you come across the Eisenhower matrix,
No.
the axis of like urgent and important? So it's they teach it somehow of how to like when you're prioritizing tasks, you want to be working on the really urgent and important, not the urgent unimportant. So I think there's kind of one of those with like the doom versus positive and the satisfied dissatisfied. So I don't feel doomy. I feel very fortunate to be doing what we're doing now. So I feel in a natural capital sustainability space, we're at like the beginning of the internet. Like we're really lucky to be doing this now because it's accelerated more in the 4 years I've been doing OC than the environment sector did in 10 or 20 years before that. And we spoke to John Elkington, whose podcast has just come out, who wrote Green Swans and the guy who invented the word sustainability, right? And he says it's faster now change than it's ever been. And I said, oh, something might happen in 10 or 20 years. And he like literally slapped me around and went, no, that's lazy thinking. It's 2 years now. With the invent of AI and everything else, what would take 20 is now 2. Your speed of execution, your speed of doing everything is so much faster. So I think I'm very happy and fortunate to be doing what we're doing, but I'm also equally dissatisfied with what we're achieving and want to do more tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I think I'm in that sweet spot.
That's a sweet spot indeed, because if you were dissatisfied with where you were now at,
And in gloom.
yeah,
you're in a rough spot.
So
Yeah,
it's important to really appreciate and pause and like think
I
of that.
worry that-
Otherwise we burn out, and it's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Well, it's a marathon of sprints, isn't
It's
it?
a marathon of sprints, but you have to be fulfilled and mentally and physically healthy to keep going.
Do you manage your energy flows? Do you think about the year in terms of I'm going to have these holidays, time with the family, I'm going to have these breaks, so that another Dan Martell is he doesn't manage time, he manages energy flows. So he knows he thinks best in like 12-week blocks. So he'll plan 12 weeks and know that there'll be a weekend away with his wife. His kids are older, but every like 12 weeks or something. Do you think about your years that way and manage for energy?
No, I think I should try. I more think on a weekly basis and day to day when I feel like, okay, and my energy level is really low. So I'm just gonna, if that's possible, I'm just gonna take a day and read a love novel on the couch. Or
That's your rest and recovery.
Yeah, it's my escapism.
Interesting.
I read a lot of books.
You
Or
always read.
no, not so much. No, when I was a kid, it was like difficult to make me read, except
too.
for school books. But now I really enjoy it.
Yeah, me
I
too.
listen to them in the car when I drive to work.
I don't read love novels though.
It's my happy place.
My wife does. But, she's not going to like that I outed that. Elle sat there. Sorry, Helen.
There is nothing wrong with love novels. They give you positive energy. So energy management things. When I feel like my energy is very low, I now start to pay attention, and okay, I need to replenish it. Like I need to go play paddle, or I need to read a novel, or I need to take a break, or I just need to take 20 minutes and go outside for a walk. I start to be more conscious on that, because I used to just go to finish every task. Like in my personality, I'm a completer finisher. So by Friday evening, I would be like at 10 o'clock in the evening, trying to finish a work task that I didn't finish yet. So I would grab a beer so I have more energy, and I would like have literally shaking hands from tiredness, but I would complete it. And now I'm trying to be more cautious of it. It's still not by far not ideal, but I try to pay attention to it. And I know that if I have higher energy levels, I also try to prioritize what is less important. I'm not great at it, but I do my best. I know that if I have higher energy levels, then the return of investment on what I do is going to be better.
I think there's so I was talking to one of our amazing team previously about they like doing a half an hour cleanup of the inbox before going to bed at night. So they like to sort of go in and clear up half an hour of emails, and their pattern means they sort of stop for the day, have dinner with their wife, then do an extra like half an hour and then stop. And I'm like, Are you sure that half an hour, if you didn't do it and actually just spent an extra half an hour with your wife, are you sure you wouldn't do it in 15 minutes the next morning instead of half an hour? Because you're more awake, you're happier, your family life is better as a result. And he was like, yeah, I should probably try that, because the way the time's invested is much more efficient.
Yeah. And also imagine if you're going on stage to speak, or you're talking to a potential partner and you're completely drained out of energy. It's just a waste of time, because you're not going to convince them. You just want. It's energy that people are attracted to.
Completely. And authenticity and enthusiasm and honesty.
Yeah.
Where does your work ethic come from? The fact that you would just push through with your hand shaking. Why do you not have an off switch?
I think it came from my parents. My parents worked several jobs, 5 jobs at a time, just to keep food on the table. I mean, when I was little, they would buy apples that were half spoiled and cut out the spoiled pieces just so that we could eat. So as I said, I don't come from a rich family. It didn't come easy to them. Plus, my mom is a professor at university, so she was always working. She was writing, when I was 2 years old, she was writing her PhD, days and nights. And I would sit next to her with a notebook and I would just draw lines on every single line in the notebook next to her, pretending that I'm also writing a PhD. So I really watched my parents work really hard. Plus, they were also very tough on me. Like, they only expected straight A's from me, and if I would get a B at school, like, they would be really mad. So yeah, they pushed me too harder, but they also said, okay, you need to work hard so you can have a good life, so you can choose the profession that you want, so you can excel at that profession, and that's where I have that work ethic from.
So spectrum of easiest going hipster parents in the world, whatever the kids want to do is fine, through to your parents. Where are you pitching your personal parent of your kids? How hard are you going to push them versus the flexibility? Are you going to be your parents or are you going to be
Probably somewhere in between.
back
Sometimes
off a little bit?
yeah. Sometimes I wonder if, our kids now live in the world where they have what they want, and sometimes I wonder if that's actually a good thing. Because as I said, I could only eat Pringles once a year on New Year's when my parents could actually buy a pack. But now children don't appreciate things as much as we did when they were scarce. So I'm constantly thinking, like, how do I educate them better? How do I inspire them? Because at some point when my parents really put together the last money they had to buy me a piano, so I could start going to a music school. And after a few lessons, I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. But it was like a huge scandal at home. Bless my parents. My mom always wanted to play the piano, but her parents didn't have money to send her to music school. So I continued for 10 years and I graduated with like an excellent honorary diploma in music. But that's because also my parents, they pushed me to do it, and I was striving for it. And now my son, for a couple of years, he does football and he really enjoyed it at the beginning. And now we're really stuck because he says, yeah, I don't want to do it anymore. And it's very difficult to get him to a game or to a training. And I'm like, what is the approach that I should take here? And even my mom tells me, well, if he's not enjoying, maybe you should just let him do something else. I'm like, Mom, do you remember how strict you were when I was a kid? Like, you would never let me do that. Yeah, but I'm thinking maybe he should try something else. So now we are choosing approach. Okay, you have to finish football this year because that's your commitment. But you have to start something else if you don't want to do it. You're not just going to sit at home. You have to choose something else. So now he wants to do paddle. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. I don't know.
No one does. Every successful person I've sat down with, talked about, has the same concerns, especially people who had a rough upbringing and a difficult childhood or weren't particularly well off. So my work ethic comes from my parents as well. Didn't get a lot of great stuff from childhood, but that was one of the really good bits, was a work ethic. They worked incredibly hard. But I don't want my kids to have to work as hard as I did. But equally, I want them to have the capacity to, if they want to achieve something. So it's so difficult.
It's really difficult. I think it's a balance of like pushing and being strict, but on the other hand, what my parents did very well, they were like that, but they're also incredibly loving. Like I never felt unloved. They always really loved me, really took care of me. So it's not like it was a hard childhood or something like this. And that's a difficult balance that I don't know how to now implement with my kids.
Your range of skills is ridiculous though, right? So we've got the academics, we've got the environmental side of stuff, we've got a successful finance career, and we're an artist as well, right?
A little bit.
When talk to us about that. When did you start creating in that way? Was that something from childhood as well, or did that come later?
Oh, when I was a child, I was writing poems that didn't rhyme, and I believed I was awesome. Anyway, I just started painting at some point as a form of meditation.
When?
It was a few years ago. And I just felt, well, it would be nice. I listened to an online course and I thought it was abstract painting. And I thought, well, I can repeat it, but I can do it in the Arctic colors. Why not? So my first painting was abstract art with Arctic colors. The painting is called Thin Ice. And then I just, liked it a lot. It felt really meditative, although I really need to feel like I have a few hours to myself. Like I can't do it during regular weeks when
How often do you get a few hours to yourself?
it's not much. Like now I used to paint more, but now I do like maybe two paintings a year. So now it's not a lot because I really need time to do
And you
it.
literally lock yourself away somewhere to do it?
I usually pick a time when no one is home and I can just focus on it. Yeah, because otherwise when my kids are there, they also want to paint. So then I have to get canvases for them, and they also, and they also really like it. And it needs to be in proper daylight, so it's not too dark. So usually the best time is when I'm home alone. But sometimes I also do it in the evening when the family is around and I am trying different techniques. But it's always the Arctic theme, but I'm trying different techniques. I tried abstract, I tried using the abstract instruments, painting glaciers, but not so abstract anymore, but more like 3D texture. And now I'm trying a different technique related to portraits and paintings, where apparently that technique came from huge graffiti walls, where my kids call it cribble crabble, where at the beginning you just take different colors and make different shapes, and it looks like you're a kid just doing nonsense. But then it's much easier to get the proportions right of what you're trying to paint, because you have a canvas where you know where each line goes into, and you can get, if you're painting a face, you can get the proportions very right, or whatever you're painting. So now I'm trying that technique, and it's also really fun. But I wish I had more time to do it.
How do you, so you describe yourself as a completer finisher, but yet you operate across such a range of different.
That's why that's why I feel sometimes that I suck at everything.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, you don't by any stretch, right? Of course you don't. But it's so interesting how you have such an array of things. I think that's one of the things, going back to parenting. Too often we try and push kids down one avenue or one route.
Yeah.
And if you'd have just done piano, you might have been an elite level pianist all the time. But would you have been happy? Would you have had this range of experiences otherwise? So, yeah, I think you've got to try lots of stuff.
We can reinvent ourselves. I mean,
oh, that's interesting.
My teachers wanted me to pursue my musical career. It's just in Russia, it's so non-paid. Like, it would be a very difficult life. So I didn't choose for it. I could have, but I didn't. But I think we can really reinvent ourselves. There was a period when I was a lot in music. There is a period where, I was much more in arts, which I still want to pick up because I just feel great when I do that. There was a period where I was at MasterCard in Tech, a period where I was leading an NGO, a period now we're focusing on soils. I'm starting in parallel my paddle career. I take lessons. I do things out of my free time. I think we have so many chances to reinvent ourselves and try different lives.
So many people don't.
So cool.
So when I hear someone says, "Oh, I've always been the same person," I'm just like, "Whoa, that's weird." Like I've been like legitimately. I've never really counted the chapters, but gut call 5 different people.
Which ones?
Oh God. So rough, crappy childhood, really into sport. Then probably.
Well, you still have got the muscles from
That's
really
very
into
kind.
sport.
Thank you. Do we get that on camera? Thank you.
I mean, it looks massive, right? In comparison to me. Now is the time to flex a little bit,
This is your podcast, not mine. Thank you. And then
the host, no, that's not true. I think it was in one of the Stephen Bartlett's episodes, or I don't know where I heard it. It's like they think the guest is the most important one, but it's the host who guides the conversation.
Yeah, but I don't find me interesting, whereas I find the guests interesting. So when podcasts go well, it's so reciprocal. Like both people feel like the other person is the one that's benefited. So like we're very grateful that you came to see us and travelled and gave us the time. Hopefully we'll give you.
Came.
Yeah, that was quite a weird. When I said yes, I'd come and do that. I didn't realise that you'd have like the Prime Minister of Belgium before me or something. So it was like, oh, okay, sure. Anyway, chapters of life.
You just told me before that you've met Richard Branson. I haven't.
I haven't met Richard Branson.
It's reciprocal.
Yeah. Okay. True.
The feeling is.
We can do some intros, some cross pollination of networks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chapters. Like massively into kayaking and trying to get in the Great Britain kayaking squad, failed dismally. Went to uni, like a uni chapter and degree PhD. Then
PhD, you have PhD on what?
we never talked about this.
No.
So I made tiny little GPSs that you threw into rivers, and they recorded ones and zeros. And I turned them, and I wrote code to turn those into patterns of how water moves. So it's half big data systems, half environmental stuff, which sort of led its way straight into OC because manipulating and managing data about the environment is such a key part of how we identify and find land.
Can you do that for soil pollution?
Could I anymore? No. Can it be done? Yes. Different chapters. Someone who's in that chapter could, I'm sure.
Okay.
There's something called sediment routing models, which you kind of split a landscape into a series of squares, however small they are, and you say water will move to the lowest square in its proximity. So you could apply similar things to pollution movements through soils and water flows and things like that.
Groundwater,
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they already exist. Like that's my thing now. Most things already do. It's just the twist and then.
But see, for you, it's like already normal and form your personality, but you're still using that knowledge today.
Do you ever find yourself back in the language that you had in different chapters? So, for example, 20 years ago, PhD, subsurface composition of natural form gravel bed river systems. So like that's not real words. They're very like that's the academic terminology for how the bottom of a river looks. But there's sort of like patterns and cadences to language that you had in different chapters that you don't use anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
I sometimes flip back into it. But anyway,
Maybe I should talk about staccatos and allegros and things like this.
Yeah, the chapters of previous lives. So, speaking of random things, we've covered your podcast. We're about to relaunch with that one.
Wait, you didn't finish on your 5 personalities?
I think I did. Crappy childhood, failed athlete once, failed athlete twice, academia, public sector, and now OC.
6th one.
You know, 6, maybe 7. So I had 3 years with an amazing company called Sanctus, where I learned how business worked. Yeah. So I picked up, this is the collecting the tools and techniques. So I understood academia and so I couldn't write when I went to uni. Like obviously I passed exams, but not to a high standard.
Oh, look at you now.
Well, that's thanks to Tom Coulthard and Stuart McClelland, who are my PhD supervisors, who every time I wrote something just crossed it out in red and handed it back. When you have that for several years, you get better at writing.
Well, LinkedIn also helps, because you see how people reciprocate, so you have to tweak your language.
Yeah, I like that. Also, the team. There's a whole other book they won't let me release where I've like, oh, what about this article? No, you can't. Bring it back a bit. So yeah, someone joked the other day that Post OC will release the unreleased articles, which will be interesting. But you are right about trialing stuff and language and things on LinkedIn. I like that. You can test a concept or an idea. It's what I love about this as well. So we might have an idea or a project that we're going to do in 12 months, but we can start trialing elements of the language and how you talk about it and describe it and playing with it. I've learned to do that with language more than I ever did when I was younger, learning to enjoy it. But anyway, less about me and more about you. Your podcast.
I was trying to derail the conversation.
I know, and you did it successfully. Penny will take it out in the edit, so none of it's about me. It'll be great. Yeah. Relaunch of your podcast.
Yes.
So what does that look like? What's the plan for that?
The plan is that I don't do every single thing myself.
I mean, I do all this myself. I do the recording. No, I'm sorry. Completely. I don't do anything. I just turn up and talk to people.
It was just really hard, to install the camera, to select cameras, to buy them, to install them, to
sequence the room, to book guests,
to deal with batteries that are dying on the cameras that you need to switch and record, to prepare the questions, to let the guests, to edit the trailer. It was a lot. And I realized I need to focus on business stuff more. And podcast is amazing at education and creating awareness and also connecting to the guests. But it's I still need to do business in normally my business hours. So how it's going to be, we're going to have a relaunch sponsored and supported with a lot of passion by Cordell Group. And Earth Plus is a part of Cordell Group. So I'm so grateful to Cordell and our marketing team that strongly believe in us and support us. We have a great video team that comes and films it, and I just enjoy a conversation with the guest. It's going to be like that. It's called Better Futures. So the previous episodes, it's going to continue the line, and actually it's an evolution from 1-minute sustainability videos I used to do on LinkedIn. First it was what's new in sustainability this week in 1 minute? and I would just cover up a few news. But most of the news would be negative. So at some point, someone sent me a LinkedIn message and said, well, I have an idea. Why don't you cover negative, but also the positive news? And I was thinking, and that made me dig deeper. So then I started tweaking it, and I both selected negative and positive news. And then at some point, I was so fed up with the gloom that I thought, now I want to do a podcast where we talk about the good things, about the breakthroughs, about the better futures we're building. And I want to invite people that are doing something around it to spread the word, and that's why it's called Better Futures, because we are now at the crossroads and we have so many possibilities and opportunities to create them. And yeah, it's going to be probably one episode a month at this moment in time. A lot of insightful conversations, super interesting people. You're one of them. We're still going to release the snippets of our conversation.
Thank you.
A rebranding as well. So exciting times. I can't wait until our next episodes are ready because they're already filmed. We just need to have a proper, exciting edit and then we are ready for launch.
Awesome. So beyond the relaunch of the podcast, what are you excited about for the future of you and Earth Plus and everything your world?
I'm excited, and I'm often picturing myself in a day when I feel grateful and at peace and hopeful that we have a lot of projects around the world on land restoration, where I know a lot of things are happening and I'm positive about the future. And I know that the food that we're eating is finally healthy and non-polluted and nutritious. And I know that that food is also on the table of my kids. That for me is most important, that we arrive to that. And yeah, that's my main goal.
I love it. We've ran way longer than I should have done, so thank you so much for giving me all that time. However, my favourite question to end on is, what's the one question I haven't asked you wish I had?
Okay, it's going to be a message then. A message to anybody that listens is that these are the exciting times of radical collaboration. What I love about the space is that it's not about competition as much as collaboration. You're bringing different people together, different companies, businesses, organizations, governments. So be that person that encourages radical collaboration. Build those connections. Support startups you're really excited about. Start something new and bring other people on board. But just get into that world of radical collaboration because it's just so exciting. And this is the only way for us to build a thriving future.
Perfect way to finish. Elena, thank you so much for coming in. You are literally Superwoman, and we all adore you here, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.